Hello, everyone. We are Geeks Not Nerds. It is returning. It's me, Captain Logan, and joining me tonight is Austin, the Day Ghost. We're gonna talk out a geeky conversation for you. And Austin, what are we talking about tonight, sir?
And I'm Vince.
No, okay. You're not. You're not Vince. You're Taff.
I'm sorry. I'm Vince Standen. Today we're talking about franchises that have kind of fallen off, and why is it that sometimes it falling off kills the entire thing for us, like it poisons the well completely, and why sometimes you just kind of go, it's bad now, but whatever, I still have what I loved anyways.
Yeah, this was, I think, kind of your idea in the first place, based on a conversation we were having about some of this. It's just sort of this phenomenon of, okay, I'm not as interested in, like, X franchise as I used to be, and maybe it's because it's gone so downhill, and that's frustrating. But then you start, kind of psychoanalyzing yourself and going, okay, but I'm not being very, very consistent. Look how much of a hypocrite I am, because it's, this stuff sucks now. But then there's other things where you're like, they keep making new versions of this, or they keep the series going of whatever it is that you like. We'll get specific here in a minute, and you don't care. You still love the parts of it that you love. You still go back and look at it as much as you ever used to. And it's easy to ignore the stuff that doesn't work now. Why can't we do that with everything? And I think you and I, maybe both, because we have different tastes and we're both interested in a lot of different things. We obviously have some overlap here and there, but like, you're not a big Star Trek guy, so you don't have the problems I've got with Star Trek, but you've probably got your franchises where it's gone south enough. Now, I know you're like this with Star Wars, where like it's gone south, and you were years ago even, right? Where like it's gone south enough now, you're like, I don't know that it's even that much fun to go back to the stuff I love anymore.
Yeah, and Star Wars was one of my favorite things growing up. Like, it was, I mean, like most kids, right? Like, I was constantly watching the movies, and I was just always really into that. And I went out with my family on a Disney cruise that was Star Wars themed, and it was like the most cool experience. And a year later, Star Wars was dead to me. It's crazy.
Does it not make you feel like a raging fanboy when that happens? Don't you feel like you should be better than that? Don't you feel like, doesn't it bother you when other people, it makes me feel like a prude, when other people go, oh, this came out, it ruined my childhood. And you go, nothing can ruin your childhood. You had your childhood, it's happened already. The stuff that you like isn't changed by newer stuff. So why does it sometimes, if not feel like it's changed it, just make you somewhat disinterested in the things you used to be interested in?
Mm-hmm. Well, with Star Wars specifically, it didn't ruin my childhood, because the new Star Wars we were getting during my childhood was bad.
But don't you have a knee-jerk reaction when other people have that attitude?
Yeah, I've never liked that term, like the "oh, you ruined my childhood" thing. But like, we all have that certain franchise where, like I said earlier, like you poison the well of it, and the entire thing kind of feels tainted. I have, because I wrote like a list of things that I've had this with, and one of them specifically I didn't think about until like right before we started, was like a childhood thing of, oh, I used to really love this thing, and it's so far past that I had to remind myself, like, oh yeah, like at one point this was one of my favorite things like ever, and it's been like dead to me for like a decade.
Yeah. Well, this is such a broad topic that, I mean, I feel like we could almost do a whole series on this. We'll try not to go longer than an hour tonight, but like, you almost want to break it down by different categories, right? Like, you've got the franchises. When I say franchise, I just mean like IP or property, right? Mm-hmm. Because you can have multiple franchises inside of a thing. When we talk about reboots, we tend to think of those as separate franchises. So let's define terms for a minute. I guess what I really mean is fandoms, just in general. So there's different, say like Spider-Man or Batman or whatever franchises, but there's, Batman is a property, right?
Yeah,
so
it's one thing ultimately. It's an umbrella that collects everything.
Yeah. So first of all, I want to break down the kind of, if we can, just off the top of our heads, Austin, help me out with this.
Yeah.
The kind of different categories that these things fall under, right? Because you'll get, because I think for me personally, I'm thinking less of like singular franchises that haven't had reboots or haven't like come back much, right? So like you'll sometimes have that TV show that just won't die, that you loved at the beginning and it kind of sucks now.
Mm-hmm. And I didn't include anything like that, but you could make a case for it.
You could make a case for it. I didn't think of that until just now in the moment.
Mm-hmm. No, because I thought of that with like Simpsons, but like it's one thing. Like it's harder for me to go, like to kind of lump it in the same idea.
But I did put that on my list of things that would be interesting to discuss this with, because that is one of those series that has just been on too long. Mm-hmm. And there is that question if a thing like that can be tainted by later iterations or later episodes not being as good as what you had at the beginning. But you'll have things like, Dexter was on for way too long. I like the early I was never a huge fan of that, but like I like the earlier seasons. Like a lot of people, I kind of fall off with it at some point. Smallville, everybody knows I'm a big fan of, but I have a love-hate relationship with it. And midway through that series, it kind of stops being what it was, and it's even a lot worse than it was, early on, which is not, great in the first place. But I guess more of the kinds of things that came to me when we were discussing this as a topic, Austin, are things that have had like multiple iterations or came back later, that we didn't, keep doing for, forever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Like your Star Wars, like your Star Trek, like things that if we had just left well enough alone.
Mm-hmm. Which is what I'm worried with Futurama, because that's coming back in like 2 months, I think.
Yeah.
And I don't even really like the Comedy Central seasons of that show, so I'm assuming it'll be more of that.
So I guess those are kind of what, like, your three broad categories, the things that just like stay on, and like The Simpsons, right? Mm. Or that stayed on a long time, like long enough to see themselves become the villain, right? And then you have the things that left for a while that you thought were done. That whether you loved or hated them at the end, you've made your peace with whatever it is, right? It's either all wonderful, or it's got pockets of bad, or it got bad, but you're still a fan of it. You still look at it. You made your peace with whatever happened to it. I'm thinking Star Trek when I say this, right? Like Enterprise, not great, but like I didn't lose my interest in Star Trek over it. And then it's got to come back later on and start messing with stuff, And then I guess the third category would be things that have multiple iterations where you have choices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can kind of jump around. I also have one other thing on my list, which isn't entirely fair, but I was like, I might as well lump it in, which is franchises that are so up in the air right now. I'm trepidatious before it's you're bad right now.
Yeah.
So it's like I said, that's not entirely fair, but I do have two things on my list that I would say have had things recently that I liked, but I'm concerned about the future because it's very who knows what'll happen.
Real quick, before we continue, I just want to say we are broadcasting this live like we have been most of our material lately, so welcome everybody that's in the comments right now. We are broadcasting very late at night, and neat of you guys to pop in while we're shooting. Thanks for watching this after the fact as well. If you are watching live and you want to make your opinion heard, you can, as always, leave a super chat in any dollar amount, and we will guarantee to talk about whatever aspect of this you're interested in or make your opinion heard, and I am looking at the comments and we'll respond to you every now and again. Bussim says, things that make bad new material bearable is a continuity of creation. If you can track the influence of the creator through each of his successors with no clean break, it's nicer than some new jerk. That's a terrific point.
Mm-hmm.
You almost feel like he's at least playing fair with you. Like, if he starts to suck later, maybe he's his heart's not in as much, or he's changed as a person. But it's kind of easier to forgive that than it is passing the torch to somebody that doesn't understand the thing, or is just trying to cash in, or
When I think that's Star Wars
into something that isn't what it is. It's Star Wars, it's Star Trek, it's...
And I think that's why you see a lot of... I'm going to throw out this word, not everyone will agree with me, but a lot of apologists for the prequels.
No, I agree with that.
It's a different type of bad.
And then you have that phenomenon, like I said, we could do a series on this. This is going to take us to so many different places, Austin. But then you have that phenomenon, and you and I were talking about this recently, of things are, to people, feel even so much worse now for a franchise like Star Wars, that suddenly the things everybody was complaining about before look great in comparison. Mm-hmm. And people start saying, oh, look, aren't the prequels great now because these new things suck? And I'm like, well, no, but I can see why, by comparison, you might appreciate them more, or might start to, have your standards change a little bit. Mm-hmm. Can you be turned back around on a franchise that you turned against because it was bad, but then you went ahead and looked at the newer stuff that was even more bad, so you've gone full circle now? Like, is that happening with people?
Yeah, and I definitely don't have that. The Last Jedi being bad doesn't make Attack of the Clones a watchable film.
Yeah. No, it doesn't. And maybe it makes it more interesting, because the ways the sequels are bad is not as interesting, maybe, as some of the ways that the prequels are bad.
Mm. Yeah, exactly.
Although Rise of Skywalker is fascinating.
It's maybe the most fascinating of the bad ones.
I don't know. Maybe that's not true.
It's probably not true. We're probably talking out of our...
I still say that's the Jurassic house of Star Wars films.
I've only seen it once.
Me too.
It came out.
I kind of want to watch it again.
And I have like this really crazy special edition release of that movie that I got for like $20 at Walmart that they couldn't sell.
I still don't understand why you bought that.
Because I thought it was funny.
Well, okay, speaking of Jurassic Park, why don't I just start there?
I think that's on my list.
Why don't we bounce back and forth and just throw out franchises? And because I feel like this is, and part of the reason I wanted to, in bringing Geeks Not Nerds back, start with this topic, is because it's such a depends question, and it's such a case-by-case kind of thing, that I don't know how to answer more broadly, like, why does it bother us with some franchises but not with others, in any way but just examine several franchises and see if we can find a pattern. Like, let's see if through the course of this conversation we can kind of land on the more, broad reasons that sometimes it's it ruins franchises, or at least makes us less interested in them. And sometimes it's very easy to ignore them in new material, no matter what bad stuff, crazy stuff is done with it.
Absolutely.
Burned In just put in a $10 super chat. Let's read that real quick, and then I want to get to Jurassic Park, and we'll bounce back and forth.
I got insulted with this $10 super chat.
Oh, you did. He says, "Love you guys, even though you're wrong sometimes." I agreed. Glad to see GNN come back. Austin, you sort of look like Corey from Halloween Ends.
Oh.
That's on you for wearing a Halloween shirt. That's probably why you went there.
That's true. And I just need to shave in general.
Halloween is a franchise we could totally talk about with this.
Halloween's on my list. That's the one I mentioned to you off camera. Is a Halloween. You can throw into this, but I also feel like it's one of 8 billion other movies. Like, it's the same with like Terminator, where I go, I have like the part that I need, and I don't need anything else. So like the fact that there are 18 bad Halloween sequels, I don't care, because I only need that first movie.
Yeah, and in saying that, and Jurassic Park is a good place to start in piggybacking even off of that, because it's the same kind of thing for me. So you're maybe immediately landing on a big pattern with this, for maybe the both of us, which is you've got franchises that are forced into franchises based on one major success, right? Now it's a film series. Now it's got a continuity. There are maybe people that care about the lore, but the vast majority of us, or at least some of us, probably care more about that first movie or maybe the first couple of movies than anything else. And so just because there are more of them, and even if we watch all of them, maybe you can't ever ruin the whole thing for us because our initial investment was in a project before it was in a continuity. And that's, for me, the big difference between something like Star Trek and Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
And also, there's like a TV versus movie thing here to some degree, too. You know, where you get invested in a serialized narrative, like something that goes on a long time, that keeps, like adding characters, subtracting characters, changing status quos, that kind of thing. You like to live and breathe with it. And then you get something like Jurassic Park or Halloween, where you're engaged in essentially a short story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And no matter what they do to it, again, even if you watch all of it, I'm never gonna not want to watch Jurassic Park. It didn't matter how bad that got. Like, you know, I watched Jurassic Plague. It's not like it made me never want to watch Jurassic Park again. Maybe I don't care so much about Jurassic World anymore. Maybe it ruined that for me, but it can't ruin Jurassic Park.
Mm-hmm. Well, and
I'm talking about Dominion for nobody that knows the code that I speak in with Jurassic Park movies.
Well, with me with Halloween, like, the Halloween ending is so perfect that doing a sequel takes away from that, but like not in terms of it as a movie. Like, it's just, if I watch a Halloween sequel, there's always that part of my head that goes, but we had such a brilliant ending. Like, I don't really need this. But I can also enjoy it in the same way I can enjoy Jurassic Park 3, which is just like a fun B movie.
Yeah, is there a part of you where things that are technically canon, like because it's considered canon, because it counts, because the fan base of the thing counts it, it can actually ruin even this kind of thing? Like a first movie that could stand alone, that you don't want to think about anything else after it. Like is it possible for that to ever go, okay, but now you've even ruined the first movie because it's in there because it counts? Because for me, I can't think of a case where that would really happen, as when we're talking about this kind of thing.
Yeah, with this, like, very specific, you have like one, essentially, like you said, short story, and this is what works, and we added more. Nothing that I can think of. Like, it's really easy for both of those franchises to just cut everything off and none of it matters afterwards. Halloween maybe more so, because there's like 6 different continuities at this point.
Yeah.
And same with something like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or like a Terminator. Where, like, those are also franchises that just keep rebooting, and it doesn't really matter at a certain point. Texas Chainsaw Massacre might have the record for the most like reboot sequels, because the last like 6 of them have only counted the first movie.
Yeah, I think of things I've seen, Halloween's the one that's done it the most times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's up there. It's
where you have something that has like not only made movies that ignore movies in the sequence, but also rebooted and then gone back to the first one again. That gets crazy. But at some point it gets kind of fun because of the ridiculousness of like how convoluted that gets, I guess.
Oh yeah, there's it's Texas Chainsaw 3D, the 2013 movie cap. We open at the end of the first movie, which is like early to mid 70s, and then we jump forward 18 years from there, and it's 2013. It's insane.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, no. When it comes to horror, that stuff is always insane.
So, why don't you throw out something else from your list, either in that category or somewhere else?
I can't believe I didn't write this down, but I'll throw it out because it's the main one that I would have, and it's important right now to me, which is Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
And that is a really important trilogy to me. It's way more important than Star Wars ever was in my childhood. And we're now at the point where we've had 2 film... sorry, I probably shouldn't say that 5 sucks because it's not out yet.
It's not out
but
yet.
That's the sense I get. is that it's probably going to suck, and 4 sucked. And the main thing is that 5 looks like they didn't learn anything from 4. And that's also a franchise, unlike Star Wars, that I can completely divorce it
I was
from.
going to say, that should be a thing, I would think, where it's pretty easy to just headcanon the other things out and be like, that never happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's easy for me to just ignore it. It's maybe sad that, like, I wish we could have done better. The big thing with me right now is like, it really sucks that we don't have any like comics or anything, or Disney's not reprinting any of the old comics. Like, I'm more annoyed on that end than I am like, we have another crappy movie coming out. And like, we have a new game coming out made by the people who make Wolfenstein, and I think that'll be really cool. So like, there is at least something I can latch onto.
Yeah.
For something that's new. We'll see, I guess.
And real quick, I think that's another part of this conversation we should probably tack on real quick is why is it important to have new entries in anything? Like, why can't you just keep going back to the things that you love in it? And, you know, does everything have to keep going?
Mm-hmm. Well, with Indiana Jones specifically, I
think the problem for me is a lot of these things will keep going, and it would be fine with me if they didn't. But if it's going to be there, it'd be nice if it was good, and if it's not, and again, this sounds prudish, this sounds unfair, and it is unfair. And I'm talking mostly about Star Trek when I say this. But when it's not working, and when it's so, like, contrary to the spirit of the original thing, you wish the whole world would turn on it. And when it doesn't, that makes it a little bit harder for me. You know, like, some of it I think has to do with the way you engage with a fandom, right? Like when there's community involved, there's a whole different wrinkle, right? There's a whole other layer of enjoyment or lack thereof with it. Like, for something like, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but with something like Indiana Jones, I'm going to assume that you're enjoying that more in a vacuum than with, like, a big group of people you're constantly, like, enjoying it with and talking it out with and stuff.
Well, it is interesting because I have been looking at a lot of fan page stuff with Indiana Jones just recently, just to see what people are thinking of with the new movie. And it's been, I think, personally really embarrassing that ever since the reviews have started to come out, it's become like, the critics are all the bad guys type thing. Like, it's become one of those, and I just kind of go like, like, you know, it is what it is. Like, this movie doesn't look very good, guys. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
Well, and that'll be an easier conversation to have after it's out, and you can just take it on its terms and, you know, like it or not for whatever it is. But I don't know, like, when it's something that I just sort of enjoy on my own, or, you know, with a couple of friends or with my kids or whatever, and there's not that community sense as much with it, for some reason, it's kind of easier when it sucks. And with the things moving forward suck with it. You know what I mean? When I'm not invested in that communal kind of way. With the Star Trek thing, I think that's a lot of why I've lost as much interest in Star Trek on the whole as I have. Where, like, New Trek hasn't ruined the whole thing to the point where I can't go back to old episodes and still like them and so, oh, well, now that there's, you know, like crappy retroactive continuity that's encroaching on it in places, it's not like I can't sort of ignore that stuff. Like, I have a hard time with most of New Trek even thinking of it as canonical in the first place. Like, it just doesn't count in my brain. And I don't like the headcanon the thing. I get that technically it is canon, right? Like, it's officially it counts. But in my brain, like, I just can't reconcile it. Like, if the suspension of disbelief isn't there, then what are you going to do? And there were people that had this with Enterprise, which I completely understood. I didn't. It didn't quite go that far, but holy God, did it get close. And I guess, and I promise I won't spend the next half an hour just talking about Star Trek, but obviously this is the big one for me where I'm like, yeah, it is hurting my enjoyment of it. And I think a lot of it is because there is still, not that New Trek is anything like as popular as Paramount would lead you to believe it is. But there's still enough of the fan base that takes it seriously that, like, that communal aspect is kind of gone for me now, because I'm not engaging with anybody else with Star Trek anymore. Like, I don't want to get into the arguments. I don't want to have to, like, get defensive and explain to people why I'm not loving the thing they think is genius. And trivia's not fun anymore unless it's just with me and other people I know that only care about the old stuff, because now people are going to ask you questions about new things, and I don't like that it counts. Like, so I'm not invested enough to care about the trivia side of it, which was always a real big part of Star Trek for me. So, like, the world is broken up to a certain point, but, like, I didn't need any more Star Trek after Enterprise necessarily. If it was gonna suck, like, that's fine. There was, like 700 plus episodes and 10 movies, like that. That's good enough. It doesn't have to keep kind of spoiled with Star Trek. Like, doesn't really have to keep going. But, like, if it's gonna keep going, and people are going to buy into it. And let me also say, because we haven't really talked much about the reboot phenomenon, but, like, if it was just the Abrams stuff after that, or if it got rebooted like a third time, it would be so much easier, because now you're just in a totally different continuity. The fact that they're adding stuff to Prime, to the original canon, just throws kind of a whole monkey wrench in it. And I don't know if you have specifically this with anything.
Yeah, so I'll throw one last point I had with Indiana Jones, then I'll jump into something that
absolutely,
that is a franchise that, like, I'm divorced from at this point, which is that part of my frustration with it is that, like, as a kid I used to write my own Indiana Jones comics, and when I was like 12, I bought a whip because I was so, like, into that stuff that it's sad that it's fallen the way that it is and nobody involved with it has any of that passion. But anyways, I'll move on to my next one, which is something that I'm divorced from, which is Harry Potter, which is something that I loved a lot as a kid. I
didn't even think of that with this.
So I read all of the books between the fourth movie and the fifth movie, and I'm like a super fan. Like, I'm like, oh, Harry Potter's the most awesome thing ever. And I loved the first three movies as a kid. I was disappointed with four, but I was like, I really like moments in four. But, like, overall, it's not great. And then I read all the books, and, like I said, I love them except the last book. And then the movies keep going, and I don't like any of them after I read the books. And that kind of killed that franchise to me, I think, is that became the only thing, and the only thing that, like, because you mentioned, like, the fandom thing of, like, talking to people, which is what made me think of bringing this up next, which is anytime I would talk to people about it, it was always, oh, well, the movies. And I was just kind of like, yeah, but, like, the movies are the watered down, like, lame versions. Like, I don't want to talk about that. I want to talk about the books.
Well, that's the problem that some of us have had with comic book movies.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Where it's like the what we see as the somewhat more watered down version of something, like MCU lately, but for some comic fans even early on, where, like, the thing that you enjoyed in a kind of smaller pool of people became super mainstream, and then the version that everybody loves, that they want to talk to you about because they know that you're really into it, is not as challenging or engaging or as exciting to you as the more nuanced, complex, more character driven thing that you fell in love with it in the first place. And so then you go, like, it's kind of hard to have as much fun with it if it was a communal experience for you. Mm-hmm. Like, that kind of thing doesn't make me not want to, when that happens with books or comics, like you said with Harry Potter, or like with Marvel, or Spider-Man or Batman or something, like, it doesn't. Batman's had kind of a nice track record on film, luckily, more recently.
Yeah, for the most part.
But but I guess it doesn't necessarily make me, like, not want to go back to print. Mm-hmm. And, like, I might go back to all the old stuff that I used to like to look at all the time, but it makes me less interested to engage in anything recent.
Yeah,
with that kind of
and
thing. But it doesn't just totally kill my fandom, like if and when this happens with Batman, I'm not suddenly wanting to sell all my Batman stuff.
mhm.
I'm not suddenly wanting to not go back and look at No Man's Land or Nightfall again or watch the old Batman movies, that kind of thing. But for some reason, I've stopped watching Star Trek
Mhm.
very much.
And I think with Harry Potter, with me, there's a very good chance I would have gotten there eventually as I grew up because I read them as kids. Like it was mainly like I'm like 8 or whatever, and I'm like Harry Potter's the most awesome thing ever. And I think I would have eventually gotten out of it because it is like a baby's first fantasy thing, and I think people kind of act like it's a more in-depth fantasy than other people do. Like somebody mentioned in the chat that like the Harry Potter series is pretty wonky in continuity and stuff just in the books already. And I agree, but I also, for me, I think the main appeal of Harry Potter is that it's Hardy Boys with very light fantasy element. So like the fact that it doesn't really add up fully in that way doesn't really bother me because like it's like a baby's first fantasy in that way.
So is the rampant fandom the problem? And does it highlight some of the things that aren't as great in the books that maybe you would tolerate or wouldn't even notice as much if only people weren't like obsessed with it?
I think that's definitely part of it. So I didn't really see
Because I'll
that.
tell you this real quick. Somebody
Yeah.
brought up earlier Doctor Who, and I absolutely had that with Doctor Who.
Mhm.
Where, like, that was the thing that was fun for a minute when I sort of stumbled upon it on my own.
Mhm.
And then the whole universe for a minute was like obsessed with it and was screaming at me for not watching more of it. And that just made me not care.
Mhm. Yeah, so I don't really see that until like high school. So I'm already kind of out of Harry Potter by that point. Like Alex Barron just said, "Sorry, Austin, but the books aren't great either." I was 10 years old. Like it's I don't really care. That's fine. um, so like I think for me as a kid, it was but I don't really like the movies, and I'm done the books. Like there's nothing really left for me. And then as I get older, I start to see some of that fandom stuff where I'm like, yeah, I'm glad I got out of that. Like, I'm glad I'm no longer really into that stuff anymore.
Uh,
What is
yeah.
the franchise that you have, sir?
Oh, sorry. I was
Oh,
trying.
sorry.
No, you're fine. I was trying to decide how I wanted to piggyback off that because there were a number of different places that I could go with that. And nostalgia is obviously a massive component to this too, where it's like when more stuff gets made in a property that you like, and you started with it when you were a kid, and then you grow up, and then you're not as into it. It's hard to decide how much of that is. It gets really complicated, right? And
Yeah,
especially this day and
did you
age
grow
with
up or did it get bad?
yeah, just with just the oversaturation of material. It's like, is it? Did I grow out of it? Is the newer stuff not as good, and that makes me not as engaged with the old stuff? But like, that doesn't happen with me as much. But maybe it's just when it's directly too connected to all of it, where it gets really convoluted. When you're jumping around time and stuff,
Mhm.
because it's like if the new Star Wars movies had nothing to do with Luke Skywalker, I don't think that it would be as difficult for big fans of that. And like, I'm not a huge Star Wars fan, but even I, as much as I did engage with Star Wars, I have lost interest, and I didn't even have all that much interest in the first place.
Mhm.
But like, I don't know, it can get a little soured when you're taking uh the characters that you loved in the first, especially if they're played by the same actors. I think that affects it too.
Mhm.
I
Where it kind of
and
poisons their performance and their work as that character.
yeah, but then again, I feel like I ought to be able to just go back to the stuff that was great in the first place and ignore those things. And to some degree, I'm able to do that. But
Mhm.
with certain things, I find it harder.
Mhm. Yeah, like with me with Star
Sorry, I'm
Wars.
jumping all over the place. But
No,
like,
it's okay. It's okay.
but sorry, what
Uh,
were you gonna say about Star Wars?
I was gonna say, like, I'm sure if I watched the original three, like, I would still enjoy them, but like, I don't want to. Like, it's so everything about that franchise is so poison to me that like I don't want to go through that experience. But I know that if I do, I'll probably still enjoy it because they are three really good movies. But I don't want to be put in that situation.
Yeah, like what we're trying to break down right now, I don't feel like are conscious choices that we're making and then examining. It's subconscious subconsciously we just lose interest, and then that's what we're trying to break down, where it's like, why am I not compelled to go back and watch my favorite things?
Mm-hmm.
So it isn't like, oh, I'm like boycotting it because I don't like the way the fandom is reacting to new stuff that I think is crappy. It's something about that is affecting my interest in returning to it, where it's like, nah, I'll just do something else.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't like that feeling. I feel
on.
like it shouldn't affect me.
Yeah, and I feel like in a few years I will look back at Star Wars. Either I will have completely moved on from this and I will have found like that kind of love for it again, or I will look back on it the same way I do with Harry Potter, where I go, that was a thing I really liked as a kid, and I have no need for it anymore. Like, it was important to me and a part of my life, and I'll never need to look at it again.
Yeah, or maybe you'll be driven enough by nostalgia that every like 10 years or so you won't help but be able to sit down and look at it again. And then you'd be like, you're re-experiencing this thing from my childhood as close to, trying to like make yourself feel like a kid again. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, there's certain movies that I think are terrible that I can easily sit down and watch because I grew up with them.
Yeah, and you just like how it makes you feel while you're looking at it.
Mm-hmm. I have a thing like that on my list we'll get to.
Okay, well, do you want to just jump around some more?
Yeah,
with
so do
items?
you want to throw out something?
Yeah, so one big one, and this kind of goes back to that initial movie experience that can't be ruined by sequels no matter how convoluted or insane it gets, but that I have a slightly different relationship with. And that's The Matrix. The Matrix is really interesting.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because that's a movie that didn't need sequels. I think you could have made better ones than we got. I think there were directions to maybe go with that, but it also doesn't need them. It's just
There's
a story.
A version of the universe where it's John Wick, where it starts off like, yeah, it doesn't need sequels, but then it got really good sequels. So you go, oh, well, it won me over.
Yeah, and what you have instead is an ambiguous ending that made your imagination go run away with itself, and you wish that the canon had just stayed in your imagination. Having said that, I have always found the second movie to be kind of a guilty pleasure. And
I know
so
a lot of people have that, yeah.
Yeah, I really like, yeah, like you said, like I'm not the only one. Mike from Red Letter Media has that. Like
one of my friends has been trying to get me to watch it for years.
I would love to blind commentary that with you, just to see what you did with it, or how you responded to it. That would be a lot of fun. I would put this in sort of a different category where it's like you can't do too much to ruin that and make me never want to look at it again, but I also enjoy some of the stuff that's not great in it. So it's this really weird kind of relationship where it's frustrating the stuff that doesn't work about it, and 3 kind of sucks, and 4 is a real mixed bag, but I like it more than most people. But like if that were to keep going, I would either, and it won't now, but like if that were to continue, I would either be able to keep having fun with it on a guilty pleasure sort of place, or just at some point like Jurassic Park, just drop it and not care. But I don't think I could ever be, and like The Matrix is maybe my favorite movie of all time. I don't think I would ever be in a Star Trek place with it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like, I don't care to look at that anymore.
Yeah.
And it's easy to put myself back in the place in time when I look at that movie.
Well, and those movies are so of their time too that it probably helps.
Yeah, it just transports me back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, those are super late 90s, early 2000s. That is just like pop culture of the 2000s.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It influenced everything.
Yeah, I mean, we're still getting some of the Matrix stuff even to this day.
Yeah, no, we'll never fully get away from it, I don't think.
I still can't believe we got the Matrix dodge shot in The Last Jedi.
Where does that happen?
It's in the Luke versus Kylo fight at the end. Kylo swings at him, and Luke like does a slow-mo backwards dodge.
And that's just like, not even appropriate for Star Wars.
And it's like, this is embarrassing. What are we doing? Like, it's 2017. It's Star Wars. Like, Why are we doing the Matrix shot?
123 rock fan, pardon me, put in a dollar and a super chat and says Jackman in Deadpool 3 is cool but also exhausting. And there were some people earlier in the comments talking about how part of the problem for them is just, again, that kind of oversaturation problem where it's like when there's so much material, does it make you just want to... I'm sorry, I don't remember who exactly asked. I can scroll up and try to find it. But somebody was like, if you throw that much at us, does it not make some of us want to just quit entirely? And I've definitely had days like that where it's like, I don't know, maybe I just want to read some nonfiction. Maybe I don't even care about this pop culture stuff anymore.
I want to become like my dad.
It's
my dad will
overwhelming.
be like, hey, I read a really good book about the history of the screw. And I'm like, that's something.
Volunteer Collector asked this question. Do you guys ever feel burnout or overwhelmed? Like, does the sheer mass volume of content of a property just make you want to quit? And
for new stuff, it can be.
If it was all great or half of it was great, then maybe not so much. And maybe it would be easier to just like ignore the stuff that didn't work for you or just put it off. Like I have that with MCU. I'm not 100% out of MCU.
Well, and I
think stuff that I have not been as interested in, I haven't felt the need to watch right away. I'm almost caught up, but I've still got a couple of the Disney Plus shows I never finished or I never started. Like She-Hulk, I just don't care. But I'll look at it at some point. I know everybody says it's the worst thing ever, but like, I don't know. I'll get to 100% at some point with that. But like Star Trek at this point, I probably never will. I'll probably never watch everything. It pisses me off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with
too much of it pisses me off.
With things that I've never looked at, where it's like, oh, maybe I should look into this. It's like really long. Like I don't know. Like I've had moments where I've been like, maybe I should try to go through the Metal Gear Solid games. They're kind of like hard to get, and like there's so many. Like I don't know, it's fine. I can live my life without that. It's fine.
Sure, but I think he's talking more about things that we're already like really big into, like really invested in. Where if they just shove too much of it in your face, does it ever make you not even care as much about the stuff that you already loved?
I don't know about like too much. For me, it's all quality. Like if it's bad, like I have no issue dropping it like that. Like there are so many, especially comic book shows, that I've been like, okay, like this is it. I'm done. I'm not going back to it, and I haven't. Like I had that with the Watchmen show, with She-Hulk, with Moon Knight, What If. I think that's it for the MCU ones, but there's definitely stuff like that in terms of quality.
And this is going to sound depressing and kind of morbid, but man, there are times where I feel like I just simply lived too long. Or maybe it would have been nicer if I'd been born like a decade or two earlier, because at one point it was much easier with any franchise I like to consume all of it, or to have consumed all of it. And when you say, like, it's easy for you with anything if it gets bad to drop it, like, I guess I have that more now, but it was always a given that there would never... Like, I keep going back to the same thing, but it's my first great love. Like, with Star Trek, like, I never imagined there would be a time where I wouldn't look at everything that they put out.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm in a place where I probably won't, and I feel very weird about that. So yeah, that is sort of the thing where it's like, I just want to give up now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, cause like I said, that's more on quality than quantity, I think. But in terms of like the being born late or whatever,
and like I am watching the one show I think is at least half decent.
Yeah, exactly. And in terms of like the born late thing, like I've always said I was born in the exact right time because everything I love exists and is easily accessible. Like all the music I love exists. I can listen to it whenever I want, and it's easier now than it's ever been. And
that's true, because if you were born a few decades
shows.
ago, you'd have to spend a lot of your money on tapes and CDs and things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So with that, I can be happy.
Hey, let me throw this one out real quick,
Yeah.
Austin, because you're going to care about this. A bottom tier collector again. He's got a lot of good comments tonight. Thoughts on James Bond?
It's on my list.
Is it on your list? It always feels like anything bad in that property is just temporary. That's a terrific point, and like Batman has been this way too. Like when BVS came out, it was really easy for me to be like, okay, but eventually, if people aren't buying into this anyway, we're going to reboot out of this and get someplace else.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So Bond is one of the things that I mentioned earlier, which is I liked the last Bond movie, but I'm trepidatious about where we're going moving forward, because there's certain things from the Daniel Craig era I don't want to continue. Like, I don't really need them to be super interconnected. I don't want to see any more of the like rebooting things. Like, and by that I mean, like, I don't want the next film to be like, oh, here's Goldfinger, here's Doctor No. Like, I don't really want any more of that.
And you don't want an origin film every time.
And I don't want an origin film, and I don't want a definitive ending for every actor. I don't want it to be like, I want it to go back to just mission films like it used to be.
I think it was fine to do that once, but that can't be the new formula.
That's exactly what I've said since that movie comes out. You get to do it once and never again. Like, we killed Bond once, it's off the table now.
And the fear is that'll just be what we do now because of the trends.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't want every Bond actor to have to be their own thing where we got to start over and then end again. Like, I don't need the next Bond to have to meet Spectre and all that stuff again. Like, it's fine if that just exists. But I don't know where we're gonna go forward. I also think they're taking too long on things. Like, I don't want the Daniel Craig, like, you have to wait like 6 years for the next movie. I think it's okay to bump that down to 3. I know a lot of people have disagreed with me on that, saying, but Austin, they're big event films. And I think you could still get that off of 3 years. Like, my main issue with the Daniel Craig era in terms of when it got bad is that I had to wait like 10 years for the next good film after after Skyfall. Because we had Spectre in the middle. And the 2010s are like the only decade that is defined by one director for James Bond, because we only had 2.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. I would like some of that to kind of go away, but we'll see how it goes. It's so up in the air.
But so yeah, I mean, I could see getting to a place if Bond just kind of lost what's great about Bond in the same way that a lot of franchises I feel like have kind of lost their way in the spirit of the thing. This last Bond franchise weirdly managed to have its cake and eat it too, where there were rules it broke and it still got away with it. Like you said, that one time. So this is kind of the exception that whatever that means proves the rule. But with Bond, I feel like for the most part, going all the way back, even when it had 3 or 4 crappy movies in a row, it didn't make Bond fans stop being Bond fans. It didn't make them not want to go back and watch the ones they love. And it didn't necessarily make them lose their optimism for the potential for it to get great later. And real quick, let me just finish this thought. That's because until the rules are changed forever with that franchise, and hopefully that doesn't happen, that's not a continuity that can't that's continuity that can always be rebooted, and you expect it to be at some point, or to even just like not even keep track that much of a continuity. And I think reboots versus ongoing continuities that may never get wiped clean, no matter how crappy and impossible and shark jumpy they get, is part of the deal with this, is part of why for some of these we lose interest in, some of them we don't, because I think all of us Star Trek and Star Wars fans have that fear that there's no wiping away the stuff that doesn't work. And if you're stuck with it forever, if you're stuck with these kind of like universe or history breaking things, it makes it harder to enjoy it, at least if you try to watch any of the new stuff. And so you have to stop at some point. And now you go, and maybe with the sorry, I gotta say this real quick. Maybe with the community issue, this is part of the problem. If we can't all agree on where the canon should stop, now we're all splintered. Now it's hard to enjoy it together. Now it's just you on an island. Going for me, Star Trek stops at Nemesis and the end of Enterprise. That's it. But I know a lot of people that don't feel that way. They stop at another point. They stop it before Enterprise. They stop it at TOS. They stop it. They haven't stopped it. They buy Picard. They buy. You see what I'm saying? Bond, you don't have to worry about any of that.
I've also never had a bad. I know this is probably hyperbolic, but I feel like the Bond fan community is one of like the chillest fandoms. Like I've never really had a bad experience. Like it'll be like, oh hey, I don't really like this film. Oh, I really like that one. Oh, okay, like we're all Bond fans. It's cool.
That's a great point.
I don't think it has that.
When you have the wrong kind of passion from people, you can feel kind of bogged down. It can feel like really weird peer pressure. I've had this with Star Trek. I've had this with Batman. I've had people just scream in my face over Batman Returns. It's very weird.
Yeah.
Like, no, you're supposed to love this movie. What the hell is wrong with you? Like, I'm glad you like it, but it's not my thing. I don't understand. Like, why am I being screamed at right now? I've had this with Doctor Who.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, like I've talked to people who really love Moore. Like Moore is the pinnacle of Bond, what all Bond should be. And I'm like, Moore is my least favorite Bond. But we both really like James Bond. Like, let's talk about how much we like this franchise. Like that's the main thing that I get from like every fan interaction I've had about James Bond.
So what you're saying is talking to people about Bond doesn't feel like politics.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny because there's so many reboots, you think that it could easily go that way, but most of the, like, I've never had that. Like, it's never really been the fight.
Like, even Sonic the Hedgehog feels like politics.
Sonic the Hedgehog is the craziest fandom, though. So.
That's on my list. That one's really weird and interesting.
Well, we might as well go to there now, yeah, because Sonic, I think, is really fascinating in that it splinters anytime there's anything new Sonic. Like, there's a new movie, there's a new game, the entire thing splinters. And it is like this big tree that goes all the way down to just the original game.
Yeah, it really does look like the two-party system when you look at Sonic fans, except it's different depending on what aspect of it you're looking at. Like,
there's like 8,000 variations on what you could be into in Sonic,
yeah,
and they're
so
all
strange.
insane.
But like, those new movies I don't like very much. Mm-hmm. But like, that doesn't kill Sonic for me.
Yeah,
Sonic's a thing that I feel like I've always been on an island with, so like it's never been a communal thing for me, even though there's a huge ravenous fan base that all talks together. And so that's an exception for me where it is that kind of fan base, but I'm not with them. I just do my own thing with Sonic.
Mm-hmm.
So like,
yeah.
I've been on the wrong side of history my whole life since the 3D games started, because I've never liked most of those, and I've always been a 16-bit guy, and so like, I'm kind of used to being in the minority with Sonic. So like, as much as I would love movies that better represented what I love about Sonic and that actually gave a crap about the lore and stuff, bad Sonic movies aren't going to make me not want to play Sonic.
Mm-hmm. I think the difference though is that, okay, like you look at something like Mario, because I think Mario is what I described with Bond. Like, everybody that likes Mario is just like, yeah, Mario's cool. Like, we all love Mario. There's nothing really divisive about Mario. With Sonic, I don't think there is a majority in their fandom. Like, there is just like 18 billion different minorities in terms of the fandom, where like you'll have people who only love the 3D games, but only specific 3D games, not all of the 3D games, and maybe they like the movies, maybe they don't. And then you have, oh, I like the 16-bit games, but not all of the 16-bit games, and maybe I like some of the 3D games. Like I said, every time something new in Sonic comes out, every single point where anyone could be splinters. And
I don't want to put any
big tree.
As always, I don't want to put people in a box, but my experience with the ravenous Sonic fan base has been I'm not saying everybody's like this, but there are a good number of super passionate people in that fan base that, even though it's as splintered as you're talking about, they need everybody to think exactly like they do.
Mm.
Those folks are in there.
Because they're trying to find a majority. But there is no majority opinion. There might be on specific things, like maybe everyone can go, oh, Generations is good. But it's still all the different pockets. Like,
yeah, most
there's
everybody
very few
goes,
things that they
Sonic
can all
Heroes was a good idea, it's not a very good game.
Mm.
Or the Werehog part of that game is crappy, but the regular sections are pretty good. Like, there's some consensus here and there.
Absolutely.
Burned In put in a $20 super chat.
Wow, Brandon's really burning it in tonight.
We really appreciate you, buddy.
He's burning in the bank, folks.
So let me go ahead and read this. What is your favorite and least favorite of these legacy trilogies? I suppose Halloween wins by default for me because I actually loved all three. It would have been Star Wars if not for The Rise of Skywalker, which gave me brain damage. So what exactly is he asking here? Your favorite and least favorite of the legacy trilogies. So
I'm just trying to narrow down. So
when he says legacy, what does he mean? Does he mean decades
like,
later and they made three?
Yeah, so like things that would count are Star Wars, Creed, Halloween,
Harry Potter.
Oh yeah, they did make a third one.
They made three of
Harry
those
Potter.
now.
Yeah, there you go.
Tron will count when that third one finally comes out. Well, no, because
that's an entire trilogy.
That's a whole trilogy.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time with this concept.
No, I'm
trying to get Star Trek.
We came back later, and it's the passing the baton. Jurassic Park is one of them. That's a legacy.
Yeah, Star Trek actually is one now, isn't it?
Yes, Star Trek
Beyond.
One.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. No,
this ones that are coming to my mind.
This is a wonderful question.
It is, and it's really hard.
Creed.
I haven't seen 2 or 3.
Okay, but there are 3 of those now.
No, I threw that out.
Did you? I missed that. I'm sorry. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I thought you were saying that was the best one.
No,
I can't go there because I haven't seen 2 or 3.
No, I knocked my microphone and my volume turned down, and I. Every now and again, I'll do that. I've got like a knob here, and I'm like, why is he so quiet? Oh, I got to turn that up. Anyway.
I've
been doing this 14 years. I still haven't figured out my technology.
Which one?
This is great and hard, by the way.
It's really hard because I can understand why you're saying Halloween, but I really don't like the last 2. But I like the first one more than I like Jurassic World or Force Awakens.
Mm-hmm.
But Creed is better than that, but I haven't seen the last 2.
And I like Jurassic World fine. It's like an even just okay thing for me. And then I love House, ironically. Jurassic House,
I don't get that.
Jurassic World, which is fine, but I love that movie. And then that last one made me want to gouge out my eyes with glass. So that's my sign. So like, I don't know, I'm so frustrated with that as a trilogy. I almost want to pick that as worse, but it's not worse than Star Wars. It's definitely not.
Mm-hmm.
It might be the same though, because I like Force Awakens just fine. Actually, that is exactly the same with Star Wars, except I would flip 2 and 3 because I think I like Rise of Skywalker more than I like Last Jedi. But ironically, it's not good or anything, but I had more fun with it.
Last Jedi killed my fandom of Star Wars. I didn't care when I walked into Rise of Skywalker. There wasn't that, height it had to hit.
See, this is why it's perfect bringing you in for a new iteration of Geeks Not Nerds, because we land on stuff differently. I'm gonna say, you haven't seen the other movies like you said. I am gonna say Creed probably for my favorite of these, because it's just consistently they're all good. I don't like 3 as well as 1 and 2, but they're all good.
Yeah. No, I feel like if I'd seen 2 or 3, I would agree with you, because that seems to be the best of them. And like I said, 1 is the best first movie out of all of them. And with the exception of Jurassic World, because I don't like any of them, it's usually the first one that I think is the best of these legacy trilogies. The
Wizarding World thing probably technically is the worst, but I didn't see 2 or 3 because I hated 1.
And I didn't see 1.
And 1's the one people like, so I can only imagine what the other 2 are like.
Well, and that was supposed to be a 5-film franchise, and they dropped it after 3, so it says a lot. So I guess for me, if I had to go for a worse one, it would be Jurassic World, just because I don't like any of them. But if I'd seen them, it's probably the Fantastic Beasts. Yeah, I don't even remember that. I'm sure
that's what I would end up picking, but I guess, I don't know. I guess to be fair, I'm gonna have to say, I was gonna say Star Wars, but Or I was going to say Jurassic Park, but I guess it's Star Wars.
It's between those two. It's a toss-up.
Yeah, that's a great question.
That's a really good question.
AMC has this comment real quick before I get back to super chats. Sorry, just jumped down on me here. I think for me, a franchise isn't ruined because of an installment of bad quality, but rather with an installment of good or bad quality, it fudges with the timeline or canon of the franchise in a way I can't accept. Yeah, that's when I drop off of the new stuff. But what I'm frustrated with and talking circles and trying to figure this out is why sometimes it makes me lose interest in the whole kit and caboodle, and why sometimes it's easy for me to just stop at a place as far as what in my mind matters. I can't even say counts, because like I know what officially counts, but if it doesn't make sense, or if I'm just not buying the internal logic, like I shut down at some point. But it doesn't always make me go. It doesn't even usually make me go, oh, well, you've ruined these characters now. Like, it's easy to just go, well, that should have never been written. So, like, let's not deal with that. What gets really complicated, Star Wars has this problem. Star Trek is beginning to with Strange New Worlds, but with like, Mandalorian, Star Wars really has this problem of you're going to really screw the pooch on the later stuff, and then you're going to go back in time and make some decent material. Well, crap, what do I do with that? What do I do with that? And then you go, and you've heard even Lucasfilm almost talk about it like this because they know that they've got fans that feel this way. And then now all bets might be off with season 3. But and I haven't watched that yet. But with Mandalorian, it's like, it seems like Disney has been wanting people to almost think of it as like a separate continuity.
Well, it was crazy
like the
when
Mandalorian
they
universe, and you're like,
and they said the Mandoverse.
Yeah, how do you have a Mandoverse? It's like the only difference between Mandalorian and the rest of Star Wars is everything, or the majority of the more recent Star Wars stuff has been not good, and they jumped the shark real hard and kind of broke the universe, in my mind, between Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker. And the Mandalorian is kind of a return to form, and I could fit it in, and it makes sense to me.
It's return to sobriety.
Yeah, so like if you could ignore 7, 8, and 9 and stuff, and you can go back and kind of treat it like the Halloween or the Terminator thing, where we count some stuff and we get rid of other stuff. But they didn't do that. Mm-hmm. Those things are still there. They haven't officially wiped away anything.
Mm-hmm. No, and they'll always be there.
Probably, especially if they're going to make a Rey movie now.
Making a Rey movie.
Because there was that rumor for a while that they really were going to retcon all the stuff that people had turned against. That's not going to happen now. Not if they make a Rey movie. I also don't trust anything they've announced, because they have become Warner Brothers during that period where they kept announcing Joker movies.
When I've said this to Dan a few times, I think the biggest up in the air one right now is probably the Mangold movie, because I imagine, because it's Lucasfilm and we've already seen it with them, they'll get cold feet when Indiana Jones comes out and it doesn't make money.
Yes, absolutely they will.
Mm-hmm.
Burned in 49 super chat. For the record, Rise of Skywalker didn't ruin my childhood. Effing polio did.
I was going to mention that earlier, and then I was like, no, I'll make my own point.
Thanks for that. Yeah, that's the Red Letter Media thing. I know I'm really hung up about this, but when it comes to things, like Star Trek, it's not even like a ruin my childhood thing. It's like a ruin my right now thing, if that makes any sense at all. Where it's like, I still love what I love. It's just, it's hard to get as engaged with it, like, as a fan. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, it makes sense. I get where you're coming from.
One franchise that I have not brought up yet that I need to, because it's another big, and I'll never be able to fully explain why, but it's another big love of mine. And I have the exact opposite thing with this that I do with Star Trek, at least so far. Because who knows what's going to happen when it all gets rebooted, which is probably around the corner. But I have the totally opposite thing with Power Rangers, where like Power Rangers has continued on all this time, and I've been perfectly content to just not care with like, Neo, Saban, most of that material. Like when Power Rangers sucks, And it's always been this way. It's like, I mean, I still have the things I like. It's easy to ignore all of that, even when it adds things to canon. And some of that is because Power Rangers never made sense. It was because, like, that show was always contradicting itself. And part of what was fun about it was nitpicking and complaining about how it does not have a cohesive continuity. And I think the other difference, too, is it's easier to be engaged with and that is a communal thing with me to some degree. I think it's easier to be engaged with the fan base with Power Rangers because this is unique for that franchise for me. There are recent and current pieces of media that I've been enjoying with Power Rangers that doesn't have anything to do with storytelling. So, like, that's become more about games for me. Like, board games, video games, card games, that kind of stuff. And then the comics, even though the canon is connected with it, are sort of their own thing. So there's been a lot of really good Power Rangers, it's just it's not on television.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Whereas with Star Trek, I just haven't had anything to sink my teeth into. There's a new Telltale-like game, which I always wanted for Star Trek, that just came out that I somehow didn't hear about at all. It's been out for a week now, that I downloaded today. I haven't had a chance to start playing it yet. And it looks like the thing I've always been wanting. It's like, maybe finally, I'm going to have this, like, really cool new Star Trek thing that I can engage with. But, like, sometimes it's not actually about the initial medium it was in, even. Sometimes the thing that can bring you back in is something else.
Yeah, I'll throw out one that's the closest I have to what you have with Power Rangers, which is Transformers. Where, like, that's something I don't really care about.
Well, Transformers, and I haven't mentioned Ninja Turtles yet, but Transformers is exactly like Ninja Turtles, because there's always some version of it happening right now, and there's a million different versions. Power Rangers isn't that way. I mean, it sort of is, in that, like, every season it's a new cast, and for a long time it felt like it kept getting rebooted, but now it all counts. Like, Transformers is just all these different iterations. Ninja Turtles is all these. So when a crappy one comes out, you just wait for the next one. And it's really easy to go back to the ones you like. You just wait for the next one.
And because with the shows, I'm like, like, whatever. If it doesn't look good, I won't watch it. But I'm a real beaten housewife when it comes to the movies, and that I keep watching them, even though I know they're going to be bad. But I keep going back to them, and I keep thinking that they're going to change. And I also grew up with them, so, like, I can go back to the first 4 films and watch them and not have an issue with it. Like, that is a nostalgic thing that I can look at, and I can get through those movies easily.
Well, see, that makes sense because it's based on a nostalgia that you have for it. I mean, I'm so much older than you that, like, I didn't have that. That first movie came out when I was, out of high school.
Yeah, and I was 10, and that was what got me into Transformers. I didn't know anything about it until that first movie.
Well, see, but that's why you have the battered housewife thing, because you start with that. If you'd started with 86, you would have been like, it's just this other iteration, and if it sucks, it sucks. Like, in 2014 Ninja Turtles, what Ninja Turtles fan saw that movie and was like, you know what, screw it, I'm done with Ninja Turtles. Like, I'm not, I can't go back to the comics, I can't go back to the 03 show. Nobody said that. Now, people were upset because it would have been nice if it was good. And this is an aspect we haven't really talked about, except for a little bit with fandoms, like accepting things that you don't know how they can accept. There is sometimes that worry of, what if this watered down crap version, I guess we talked about this a little bit with MCU, what if this watered down crap version becomes the version for, like, a new generation, and that's all you get forevermore? There is that worry with stuff. Maybe you have that with Transformers.
Yeah, no, there can be stuff like that where things change. I mean, I have that with Bumblebee, where, like, I don't like that the movie removed the voice to do the ET thing, and now we're stuck with that forevermore. That's lame. But it's whatever. Like, I can look past it. I think the thing that sucks for me with Transformers is that we're not that far off from, like, a really good period for Transformers, where we had the War for Cybertron games, we had the Prime show. Like, just a few years ago, things were really good, and now it's just kind of,
They've at least always had decent comics.
Yeah, exactly. And they don't have comics right now because they're, like, between companies, but
which is sad.
It'll come whenever. Yeah. That's whatever, and we'll see how that movie turns out. But
do you have this with comics? What I mean is, do you do like extra media versions of things
kill the comic book
sucking
version?
make you just not even want to read the books? Where you're like, I don't care about this character right now. Like, I just can't get into it.
I have that to a degree with Spider-Man right now, anyways, where it's like, and part of it is because the comics suck now. But like, I feel like, okay, the last movie dropped the ball. The comics aren't good right now. I feel like there's something else. I mentioned this to you today too, and I can't remember off the top of my head what it was. But there's something else Spider-Man wise that's not good, right? Oh, we've had no good cartoons in like the longest time.
Yeah, we haven't had good comic book cartoons for anything.
Mm-hmm. No, exactly.
Anything that's not like Invincible or something. Like, we don't make Batman for adults anymore. That's maybe going to change pretty soon, finally. But for the longest time,
Spider-Man, because we're getting a new cartoon, but
yeah,
it remains to be seen.
Yeah,
like that kind of bums me out and like makes me.
And I'm nervous about it. But like, 90s X-Men is coming back. Maybe that'll be okay. Like,
yeah, we'll see how that goes.
I don't trust that, but
the best thing I can say about Spider-Man is that no matter what, it'll never be 2014 again, which is like the worst year for that character. Where you have Amazing Spider-Man 2, the Amazing Spider-Man 2 game, Spider-Man just died in main continuity and was replaced by Doc Ock, and he was dead in the Ultimate Universe and replaced by Miles. There's just like, if you're a fan of Peter Parker, you're screwed. There's nothing good.
I will say, I think I have lost interest in Spider-Man as a character to some degree. I'm sad to say.
Mm-hmm.
Not just because a lot of the material hasn't been great, but because the general like attitude about why that character is interesting and worth looking at is different from what it is traditionally and what I like about that character, which maybe shouldn't affect me at all. Again, maybe I should be able to find a way to just enjoy it in a vacuum, but for some reason it does affect me a little bit. Where it's like,
I think part of that though, Cap, is that it's not just like a fandom thing. It is like it's the creators too. Like you get it from the creators where they're like, oh, like look at Spider-Man, and you go, it's not what that character is. Like that's not what I want from that character.
But I guess what I mean is, why then don't I just ignore all of that and go back to the things I really like with it? Like, I don't really go back and read a lot of Spider-Man comics anymore. Like, it is a thing that I have just kind of lost interest in.
And I don't know why, but I have that too, where I'm like, I don't even really want to go back to like Ditko stuff, and Ditko's my favorite Spider-Man. Like, I love that stuff, but like I have no real interest in it now, and I'm sure that'll turn around. Because I have that a lot with comics, where it's like I'll go in and out of things. Like I will go long periods where I don't read any Batman, and then I go, oh yeah, I love Batman, and then I read a ton of Batman.
It's exactly what you said earlier, and we've talked about so many different fandoms. We've hit a record here, I think, just with the certain number of properties we've referenced and discussed here. But I can't remember what it was you were talking about, but I've had the same thing that you have, where you just can't get excited about turning it on yourself. But if you had the Clockwork Orange thing, and somebody put you in a chair, and like...
Oh, with Star Wars, yeah.
Yeah, if somebody forced me... That's what you said, original trilogy. If somebody put me in a chair and put on my projector screen, Star Trek right now, like, I would enjoy it. Or, like, force me to read Spider-Man comics from like later 80s, early 90s when I love Spider-Man comics, like when I first get into that stuff. Obviously I love Stan Lee and stuff too, but like that's my era.
Yeah, of course.
Then it's not like it would scream bloody murder or something. Like, I'm sure I would enjoy myself, and it would probably get me back into it again.
Yeah, like our buddy Doolittle in the Discord posted, he just got like, I think it was like the artisan copy of the Romita Spider-Man, like whatever that book is, I'm not entirely sure. But he posted some art of it, and it was really beautiful, and I was like, oh yeah, like I remember loving Spider-Man. Like, I don't really want to jump in and read Spider-Man right now, but like that is a part of me. Like, that is built in there somewhere, even if I'm not as into it right now.
Okay, we've got another super chat, possibly two, and we were going to cut this off at an hour. We're at an hour 15. It's been a good discussion. Thanks a lot for hanging out with us, guys. Remix 36720, $5 super chat. Thank you so much. I think the issue with Star Wars in part is it is a saga. This is a terrific point. If the saga's ending sucks, it damages the whole. Retcon of sequels may get my interest back. I think my counter to that is, and this is just for my part, because Austin won't agree with this because he didn't like Force Awakens, but for me, it wasn't.
I mean, I like Force Awakens well enough.
Oh, okay. I thought you didn't like that movie. For me, the deal is, I don't have to have more Star Wars past Return of the Jedi. Like it's not a saga that where there was any closure I needed. You know what I mean?
It has a great ending.
But if you make Force Awakens and you've got all these mysteries, and it feels like a solid, regardless of regurgitation and stuff in plot, I felt like that was a solid first act. Now it's not so much it's a saga that's got a crap ending, because that the whole like Skywalker saga thing felt really forced to me.
Yeah,
I
mean, that was we wanted that end game buzz, right? And we saw that with X-Men too, where Dark Phoenix tried to build it as we've been building to this all along in our completely convoluted way.
And even to a lesser degree, you have that with the Nolan Batman trilogy, where like they marketed that right. We're all calling it the Nolan Batman trilogy. I've always resisted that. It's not a true trilogy. They forced it into that, so it sort of kind of is. But like that's not how it was conceptualized. After Dark Knight, there's no reason that can't go on for 8 more movies. But now it's a trilogy. But anyway, I digress. So when he says like if the saga's ending sucks, it damages the whole. Yeah, that's true. And I'm trying to think of a good example if I've ever had that with stuff where like if you don't stick the landing with the thing that is intended to be, a 3-act thing. Like maybe people had this with The Hobbit, if they like that first movie, okay, that sort of thing.
Yeah, but The Hobbit doesn't ruin. I mean, I'm really weird with The Hobbit. Like I have like a whole other thing with that trilogy. But
I was just trying to think of an example.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I could go to Halloween with that too. Like, the last 2 Halloween films don't kill what I liked about the first one in that, like the first one in that trilogy, not the original. But I don't know.
Yeah, even though it ends on a cliffhanger. No, that's weird. I kind of have that too. But it would be, and I don't know if I'll go back to that. It would be a little bit more disappointing going back to that, because part of what's fun about that ending is, gee, I wonder what's going to go next.
And that is one of those places where I don't want any sequel to Halloween. So like the fact that I like the 2018 film, like, okay, is kind of like its own thing, as opposed to that kind of Star Wars, continuing the legacy kind of thing that he was talking about in the super chat. So like it isn't entirely the same, but I'm trying to think of other things like that.
But for Star Wars, for me, it's less the saga thing and more you've retroactively added nonsense that just doesn't fit. And that happened with the prequels too. So it's like retroactively you've made things really convoluted, and now you did it again in sequels moving forward. But then with the whole Palpatine thing, you went backwards and you added crazy crap.
Well, and I also feel like, and feel free to everyone in the comments disagree with me, the prequels have always been more damaging to the original trilogy to me than the sequels. Like I can disconnect them a lot easier.
The sequels,
yeah,
but the Palpatine thing makes it weird.
Yeah, but also by that point I'm so out of it that I don't care.
Absolutely.
So
I'm just saying technically it does break the universe as much as the prequels do.
No, absolutely. No, it's like I said, like it's that's at a point where I don't care anymore. So like I'm just kind of whatever. Like Palpatine's back, who cares? Well, I don't have that with the prequels. Like every little thing like that annoys me. My worst thing in any of the Star Wars films, out of like taking something from the original trilogy that I like, is prequel Yoda. And sequel Yoda is also not good, but for different reasons. Basically, Yoda has only been good in one movie. It's Empire Strikes Back. See, Return of the Jedi, he shows up, he's got a little cameo, and he dies.
Well, let's try to wrap up here if we can. Austin,
I can quickly throw out stuff if you want, or if you want to just roll off what we're.
Yeah, if you want to throw out any more franchises, feel free. I mean, we've hit a ton of stuff, but then I want to just kind of wrap this up in a bow a little bit and figure out what our takeaways are. Like if we landed on any like real answers as to why we have the I don't care anymore response sometimes but not other times.
Okay, I will rattle off the last things on my list because there's only 5, and I'll just real brief, one sentence. This is how I feel about it. Pirates of the Caribbean. I don't care. It's, I think, a really good trilogy that they made more of, and it's completely outside of what they were doing.
Something I completely forgot to mention, in the review we did tonight of Collateral, is the writer of that movie wrote the first Pirates, and the very next thing he did was Collateral.
Oh, interesting.
And I completely forgot to bring that up. And we didn't talk about the director at all. He did Last of the Mohicans and stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, fascinating. I didn't know that.
Anyway.
So I can easily separate that as this guy made a trilogy and then Disney made more.
Sure.
Universal Monsters I have on here. That's more just unfortunate that we keep trying to reboot it. And it just never works. But it would be cool if we had something with that.
Yeah, how can you not just have a disconnect with that?
Yeah, it's so disparate that it's like whatever. They just keep trying and it fails. And I just keep looking at it and going, guys, it's so easy. Like,
I would assume Godzilla fans are like that too.
Yeah, I'd imagine so.
Godzilla weirdly is more like Bond.
Yeah, you can kind of do anything with that. And we're always rebooting. Like we're getting, I think, 2 films next year. Maybe it's 1 this year, 1 next year, because we're getting a new Toho film and a new American. So like, there's always something. Evil Dead, just I need them to stop letting other people that aren't Sam Raimi make those.
Well, that's Sam Raimi's fault. He's just sitting back letting other people make that and taking a paycheck, I think.
Yep. And none of them understand why his movies work. Scream, I feel like, is a franchise that I'm also just getting out of as I'm getting older. But also at the same time, it's another Evil Dead thing where we keep making bad ones. Alien and Predator, I include them as one thing. We had a really good Predator film, so I hope we get more of that. That's a Bond thing where I'm just trepidatious about where we're moving forward. And Alien, I don't trust their reboot film because it's the guy who made the last Texas Chainsaw Massacre and the remake of Evil Dead, so I don't trust that at all. And we just found out that Disney had a 10-episode of Alien vs. Predator animated show that is completely finished and is just sitting there.
Yep.
And that's the one thing I've always wanted. So
who knows if that's any good, though?
That is true, but in my heart I want it. Cap, I want it.
But apparently that's an animated thing made by a showrunner with apparently not a great track record. I forget what else he did, but like people don't like his other stuff, so...
But that's a Batgirl situation to me if I cared about Batgirl. Where that is a thing that I care about enough that I don't care if it's bad, I want to see what it looks like.
You know why I care about Batgirl?
Because Michael Keaton's in it?
No, because I'm a completist with superhero stuff. I don't like the idea that it's just sitting there and I'm never going to see it. Like, whether it sucks or not.
I thought you were just a really big Brendan Fraser fan, and you're like, I don't like that there's a Brendan Fraser movie that I can't see.
No, for the longest time, quite the opposite. I used to really not like Brendan Fraser. I've turned around on that a little bit, but...
You just really love The Mummy Returns.
That's okay. He got to be Machine Man for, 4 or 5 seasons, so he got to do his DC thing.
Oh, he's, it's not Robot Man.
Robot Man, there you go.
Yep. I want to see that.
I like the pilot. I've seen it twice. I never watched any more of it. But how much did that do patrol? 4 or 5 seasons?
I think 4 or 5. And I trust that more than I trust Swamp Thing, because everyone told me Swamp Thing was really good, and I watched 2 episodes, and I was like, this is not very good.
You couldn't get into it?
Yeah, and I've had no desire to go back to it.
I don't know. Anything that kills off Tim Russ in the first 10 minutes, like, how dare you? How dare you?
How dare you, sir?
The only other thing on my list that I didn't get brought up at all, we barely talked about Ninja Turtles, but I think I made my point on that, was Ghostbusters. And Ghostbusters is interesting because it's unique, because that is the only franchise I can think of that has never effectively really been a franchise, and that falls in that kind of Halloween category of that in Jurassic Park. That first movie is a movie, and you can't do anything to make me ever not enjoy that and not want to sit down and watch it. And also, it has a sequel. It's not very good in the first place. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's not great. But then, they've done a couple of things that are awful, and it's not like it makes me, not want to see the first one. So this one's weird because I would love Ghostbusters to actually be a good, solid franchise, but if it never is, it's kind of whatever.
Yeah, and I like Ghostbusters 2 a lot, but anyways,
I mean, it's fine. I don't really care, one way or another with that movie, but.
Well, I'm less harsh on Ghostbusters than you are in general because I like Afterlife okay, and I have no interest in watching 2016. So
don't do it. But yeah, so any big takeaways from this conversation? Did you learn anything about yourself, Austin?
That I am a giant hypocrite. That
Yeah,
understand.
That's
because
I
am, at the end of the day, a mess of chemical reactions.
Yeah, you just feel the way you feel, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like kind of like studying, kind of looking into different things that I like that I have this stuff with. I've learned that I'm not as cynical as I think I thought I was.
No, say studying. Be pretentious on this show. Yeah. Absolutely.
I just need a monocle. I think I'm not as cynical as I maybe thought I was going into it. Because really, at the end of the day, the only thing that I'm like, you're dead to me is Star Wars and Harry Potter. But Harry Potter can be... Did I go out of it because I got older? Or did I just not like what was happening? Like, I can't answer that question because I was 10 years old. So really, like, it's kind of just Star Wars. So, like, I think I can be happy in that I'm not a cynical a-hole.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anything is straight up dead to me. I just don't feel like a real Star Trek fan because I don't want to watch all of Star Trek anymore. But it's that thing where I also don't want to just consume material to consume it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've never had that. Like,
I don't like falling in that trap.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like
I have no issue cutting things if I don't like it.
That is, and see, I do, and I don't like that I do. I feel like I shouldn't let corporations tell me what to do.
Mm-hmm. Although, it's a giant struggle in my heart on whether or not I'm going to see Indiana Jones 5, where there's the part of me that goes, well, I have to watch it. It's an Indiana Jones movie. I'm not going to
see. So you do have this with something.
So I do have this with something, but it's an internal struggle where I don't want to, where I want to break out of that. But then there's the 10-year-old me with a whip around my throat saying, no, you're watching this.
Yeah. How much of it is the nostalgic part of your brain says you have to see this because you love this, and even if it sucks, you're too curious. And then how much of it is just like you want to know so that you could talk about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I feel like at the end of the day with that, I feel like I'm going to be hurt either way. There's like that part of me that's hurt by the fact that I'm so not into it that I don't want to see it. And then there's the part that knows it's going to be hurt when I watch the movie. You know what I mean? And it's a struggle. First world problems, what can I say?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know, like, the hang up for me is I don't like the idea that, like, peer pressure or the like social climate can tell me like how to enjoy a thing or if I should even bother with a thing. Like, I don't like that affects me at all.
Mm-hmm.
And for the most part, I feel pretty separated from that stuff. And I'm not even really paying attention to like what Star Trek fans are saying or what Spider-Man fans are saying. And yet just knowing that folks are out there that are engaging in material that I think is like really beneath those things.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me want to do other things. It's weird.
Yeah, it's just kind of sad.
I don't like that about myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I keep thinking like I need to find ways to get like more engaged with that stuff again. But then I also have other things to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Other things that just naturally are grabbing me. But you're right, this is first world problems, certainly.
Yeah, exactly.
Jeff Gearhart says modern video games feel kind of dead to me. I definitely have that.
For me, it's case by case. Like, there's certain things. I think I'm more into this generation than I was the last one. Like, there's just more games that I'm like, oh, I'm excited for that, than I was last generation. But
I've also spent too many years not playing like AAA type stuff, so I suck at it all and I can't do it. I've turned into an old person with this.
Get good, bro.
I might as well just not even be like a video game person. It's weird because like I've continued playing video games, but people will be, oh, Cap, you don't know how to play video games. And I'm like, I mean, I do. I just don't know how to play the stuff you're playing. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't know if you remember, but when they announced the new systems, I was super disenfranchised with video games, where we were coming off of what I think is the worst generation of my lifetime in games. And I was like, I have nothing moving forward that I like. Like,
yeah. Here's
my main issue with the industry as a whole. And then we started making more games that I liked. And I was like, okay, we're winning me back a little bit here. There's at least things I can be excited about. But I don't know if I'll ever be to the point I used to be when I was younger.
Well, Austin, any other final thoughts with this?
No. I think we got all of it.
Okay. James Egan and some other folks in the comments are
asking
for rants. And
you have a rant?
We did not prepare rants, but I'm sure we can come up with something to complain about. We are all about the first world problems. The thing that immediately comes to me is actually a rant for you. Do you have a good rant? Because I can give you one that I know you'll roll with.
Okay, let's go. Give me my rant. I feel like I'm in high school again, where I'm in drama, and my teacher's like, you know what, Austin? Normally I let you write your own skits, but this time I want you to do this. And I'm like, okay.
Okay.
Challenge accepted.
I'm gonna give you 2 words. Are you ready?
Yes.
Hot toys. Go.
Okay, so today I sent Cap this diorama picture, and I was like, oh, Cap, check this out. They're making a cool little Flash Batman suit diorama of the shot that they have in the trailer of the Batcave where he's got like the 8 suits or whatever. I was like, look at that. Isn't that cool? And Cap goes, not for like $2,000. And I'm like, oh.
We don't actually know what that's going to cost. I just threw a number out there because they're expensive.
I'm like, what do you mean? What do you mean $2,000? And Cap sends me just a picture of a Hot Toys Batman, and he goes, this is like $300. And
305, which was a suspicious number.
Very suspicious. Like, to the point where I wanted to call the IRS when you said
the IRA! Gonna take away Batman's guns?
The Irish are coming. The IRA is coming.
That IRA!
They're gonna bomb Hot Toys. That's nonsense. Okay, toys are already too expensive. Let me tell you what. I remember when I was younger, it was around like 2017, 2018, I think. I was like, you know what? I'm a geek. I'm going to try collecting Marvel Legends.
Not a nerd.
No, exactly. I'm a geek, not a nerd. Which I have been in conversations where I've said that to people, and I'm surprised I haven't been assaulted for saying it. But anyway. What was I saying? Oh, yeah, so Marvel Legends. So, like, those were like $25, $30 a pop, and like I think that's already too expensive. Like that's more than I want to pay for anything. But then you'll get like the ones that they don't make enough of that are always the really popular ones, because of course, like I remember getting the Infinity War one Build-A-Figure set lineup thing, and the big one that was the hard one to get was the Iron Spider-Man one because of course. So I ended up having to pay like $60 to get that. And then I got a Build-A-Figure Thanos whose arm doesn't click in properly and it just falls out. So that's fun. But the only thing I got out of that was good is my Man-Thing Build-A-Figure, whom I love.
Oh, I know. And you just won't stop talking about him.
because he's beautiful, and he's a beautiful Build-A-Figure that his arms fit in properly.
That's good. I'm glad that would have been a travesty.
I would have
for
cried
you.
for you.
For you.
So then you get Hot Toys that are like $200 and $300 for Batman.
They're not statues.
No, they're just action figures.
And don't get me wrong, they're beautiful.
Yeah, not that much. I wouldn't pay that much for a person, let alone a toy.
Now I will say I have spent as much as $100 for one action figure for like in like a big one. Like you've seen the Michael Keaton I've got.
Okay,
That's
yeah.
almost of that quality, like, but it's huge and like no, I get why they cost what they cost to some degree, but I do think there's a little bit of like with Hot Toys especially, like it's sideshow a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit of you're paying for the brand. Right?
Well, then they have
paying for reputation. These are supposed to be expensive. That's how you tell everybody, look, I have this amazing cool thing. I spent too much money on it.
Mm-hmm. Well, then what are those ones where they're like the Figure Arts K or something? They're like the really expensive ones that are like $1,000. I remember like in high school, I was like, oh man, I really want the Arkham Batman version of that, but it's like $1,000. Like I'm not spending $1,000 on that. Especially because I was right at the point where my mom was like throwing all that stuff away. So if I bought it, she would have been pissed.
Well, I never bought, one of those really expensive resin statues, and there were several I always wanted to get. And you get these really cool ones that it's like a Spider-Man 2099. It's like $800 or whatever, and you'd be like, that would be beautiful. And then you go, if I have to ship it, it's gonna break in the box in the mail. Which happen to people all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just not worth it. And even if you buy it at a store and bring it home, like, you could really screw up and drop it. And then I started getting into these, like, they're statues, but they're plastic, that, Diamond makes. And those have gotten pretty popular. And I don't know why we didn't do this a lot earlier. Like I said, they're $60. They don't break on you. They're just made of plastic, but like you can't tell looking at them. They're like really well made, and I get compliments on them.
One you got me is really nice.
Yeah, and I get compliments on them. Well, you saw the Dark Phoenix I got.
Yeah.
Like I get compliments on them all the time when people come over, or if I take pictures and I put them up on like the Discord and stuff, and I'm like, well, people are impressed with these. They're $60. Nobody cares. I've never had one person be like, "You're buying plastic."
Yeah, nobody's
buy the breakable crap, Cap. AMC NECA, thank you, is who made the big '89 Batman that I have, and they fall in between like a Mattel and a Hot Toys, and they make a lot of like reasonably priced but more elaborate stuff.
I've always wanted a nice NECA Predator, but I've never gotten.
They do a lot of like $35, $40 figures. That when you look at everything they come with and the size of them and stuff, the price point is not unfair.
Yeah, no, some of that Predator stuff that I've seen just like in store is really sweet and comes with a lot of accessory things because it's Predator and that's what you want.
Yeah.
I also just remembered another little bit of a rant with this toy thing to add on to it. Because I remember, so 2017, 2018, I was like, I'm going to collect Marvel Legends. But I had that a little bit in 2013, which was when I originally decided, and then I stopped very quickly. But I was like, I'm going to collect Marvel Legends. And it was the Iron Man 3 wave where they were all Iron Mans. And I remember, because I didn't have like Amazon or anything, like I couldn't order them. And boy, is finding that stuff in the store sometimes very annoying.
Yeah.
And I remember walking into this like kind of not like comic book store, but one of those like comic book adjacent stores, where it's like merchandise, and being like, "Hello, sir. Do you have the Iron Man Marvel Legends?" And the guy was just like, "I don't know what that means. Look in the store, you'll see." And I was like, yeah, but like you didn't have the Iron Man ones I wanted. He's like, then I don't have them.
Your employees probably bought them all.
Yeah, exactly.
On day one.
I just want my Build-A-Figure Ironmonger.
I hope his arm doesn't pop off.
I hope it's not shoddily made.
See, I
and
fed you your rant. You got 10 minutes out of it.
and half of my iron figures, their arms wouldn't bend. Why did I go back to buying them like 4 years later? Anyways, rant over. I'm done. Thank you. I hope I performed that. To the
I
best
hope
of
I
my
passed the
imagination.
audition.
Exactly. I hope I passed your test.
Gareth Gearhart, can you show Dark Phoenix cap? Yeah, give me 5 seconds. I'll come back here and grab it.
You can kind of see it from the top. It's up there in the on the shelf.
Which, see, I'm willing to do because it's made out of plastic. I don't have to worry about it breaking. But yeah, here she is. Let me move this light a little. Well, I can't really do anything about that right now. So the face is going to be a little bit whited out. But anyway, I don't know. The pose is really cool. The colors are great. I like the way the light goes through the hair.
Yeah, it looks really cool.
Anyway, okay, I'll do a real quick.
Yes, what is your rant?
Austin. So I went to, speaking of, the same store I bought that actually the other day. I was at a vintage stock here in town, and I was just looking around. They were having a sale, and didn't end up getting anything that time. It's like every time they have a big sale, I don't find anything. But when everything's normal price, there's like 16 things I want, right?
Oh, of course, that's always the way.
That's not the rant, though. So I'm walking around the store, and all of a sudden they start playing. You know, occasionally you'll get like some of your favorite like more geeky music in a vintage stock. You don't have those stores there, but you know they sell new and used. Paraphernalia for like pop culture stuff.
Stores. Not that specific one, but we got that
things
stuff.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they'll play a lot of like video game music covers and just kind of novelty music, Weird Al occasionally, that kind of thing. And they start playing what?
No, I sorry. You mentioned the music, and
I'm trying to do a rant here.
I went to a Christian one of those stores, and they had the James Bond theme playing on loop. I was there for 20 minutes. And it was just playing over and over, and that's like a 1-minute song.
You're like, I need to make my purchase, and there's 6 people in line.
But I was just excited. I was like, I would rather this than Jesus music. So I'm down that these Christian people are just blasting Bond.
Go the F to church. Anyway, so I was in the store, and they start playing They May Be Giants Istanbul. And I was like, that's cool. They're playing some TMBG. It's one of the 3 obvious TMBG songs, but
sure, that's something.
They're playing Istanbul.
If it wasn't wins where you get them.
If it wasn't Istanbul, it would have been Particle Man, and if it wasn't Particle Man, it would have been Birdhouse in Your Soul. But it was Istanbul, and I'm walking around the store, and I'm looking around, and no one is reacting to Istanbul. It's just playing, and I'm like, that's cool, and there's like a lot of people here, and I'm like. Nobody's feeling the need to freak out about the fact that they're playing this. It's just normal here. That's nice, right? And then I don't know what the next song was, but some other song starts playing after that. You know, they've got it on a Spotify playlist or whatever they're playing.
Yeah.
30 seconds to a minute. This is a very specific rant. 30 seconds to a minute into the next song, this guy behind me, looking over at action figures or something, suddenly starts going, Istanbul is Constantinople. I'm like, you can't do that. That song is over.
Oh my god, I wish you like made a point of it where you turned and you were like, you can't do that, sir. That song is over.
No,
sing the new song.
You don't sing that.
Sing the new song or get the hell out.
I hate it when people sing songs when there's a different song playing. I hate it. But in this case, it was even worse because that guy had every opportunity to sing it earlier. And he skipped the whole song. And again, it was kind of nice that nobody was doing that. But then
it was probably stuck in his head at the point.
Completely other genre. It might have been R&B. I don't remember. He just starts going, Istanbul. It was like, even old New York. It's like he hadn't heard the song in 15 years. And now it was all coming back to him. And he sang most of the song over this other song that was playing at the same volume.
And you were like, no, sir. What you're supposed to be singing now is. You know,
imagine if that song had been playing not on loop, right? And the next thing that played was Istanbul, right? And the guy behind you went, ba-da-ba, ba-da-ba.
I mean, I'd be doing that with him. I'm not gonna lie. But
vetoing my TMBG.
The real question I have is, when you listen to a song, Cap, before the words kick in, will you sometimes sing the words before they start? In any way. But what I do is see how far into the song I can sing before the words start.
I've definitely done that.
Where you see if you can speed around the song as fast as possible in that period before the words start.
The other thing I do is, if I'm riding around with somebody that I know doesn't know the album that we're listening to, if we're like listening to an album that I've heard a million times, I will start singing the next song before it starts. So they're like, God, you really know this album quite well. Like, that's always fun.
You should start singing the previous song, though.
You just keep singing it? That's so irritating. No, I have like a standing rule at my house where my kids are not allowed to sing different songs than what's playing right now. I hate it.
Remember, kids, the boogeyman comes and cuts off your fingers if you sing a song that was previous.
Because they'll do it too. They'll just start singing some other song. I'm like, that's not the song that's playing. If you want me to turn off the song, then sure. But like, we didn't even prepare the rants. Okay, this show is almost 2 hours long. We got to get going. Thanks a lot for listening, everybody, to a brand new episode for the first time in a long time of Geeks Not Nerds, and we will be back again with lots more stuff over the next couple days here on Geekvolution. Tomorrow, a new Captain Logan show at 7 o'clock Central Time, taking your questions on whatever you want to talk about within reason, some kind of lead-in topic, don't know what that'll be yet. And then Friday night, Austin and I are going to do a commentary on the pilot for the 90s Flash show, which I'm planning on rewatching ahead of time. I haven't seen that in a while, and Austin might watch it blind. He might try to watch it ahead of time. I don't know what he's doing yet.
I'll play it by ear. I'll see if I can watch it beforehand.
Cool. But yeah, so that won't be an official rewind commentary because it's not a movie, but it might be effectively like a rewind commentary if we're actually prepared for that one. But we're going to call it a watch party, but we might be a little bit more prepared by that or than that. Anyway, it's getting late. You guys are great. Thanks for being here. We will see you again real soon with I want to say another one. We're not going to do this at any particular clip, but when we come up with a cool topic, we'll bring the GNN thing back. And Austin, thanks for doing it with me, man.
Yeah, thanks. This was fun.
I had a really good time. I'm not sure that we landed anywhere on the topic, but it was interesting to talk it all out.
No, if I've landed on anything tonight, it's I hate toys and I hate music when it's not played during its time.
See you later, folks. Bye, everybody.
See ya.